I wanted to talk about Tesla's magnifying transmitter a little bit, sort of give my 2 cents on it. And I think it was probably the greatest gift to the planet that was refused, basically, because of greed, because of misunderstanding, and partly because Tesla was not good at taking care of the small things in his life. He could have made a lot of money off of the small inventions that he made, and it was sort of beneath him. He didn't want to work on the small things, he called them. He just wanted to work on the big things, and it was to his detriment, unfortunately, and to ours in the end. So, a century and a quarter later, we're left with sort of an abomination of energy that sort of bleeds more energy out of us than it gives us, basically, I think. But that's where we are. Hopefully, things will change someday. But I wanted to kind of go over how I understand this tower and how it worked. Um, and there's the planet. And we'll do a little Tesla tower right there. Tesla often referred to the planet as a conductor. It was the best conductor ever, so the best wire, basically, ever. And this is key to how this worked and what was going on. Inside the tower, you'd have what everyone knows. You'd have your primary coil, your secondary, probably an extra coil, probably some adjustments for tuning in there, some spheres or something. And in the beginning, Tesla I think he wanted to go as deep as he could and as large on the capacitance as he could, and that, to get his voltage standing wave ratio up as high as he could without it arcing away. Later on, there's hints that maybe he figured out how to do it a very small version that worked just as well. But at this point, I think this is what he was thinking. And there was tunnels underneath, and this transmitter, basically an antenna, went down into the ground. And there was lots of talk about how this had to grip the earth. And there's two reasons why it has to grip the earth. First is the tapping or the belling of the planet that sets it into a resonant state. He did lots of experiments on tapping the earth. He at one writing, he said that he could probably split the earth in half, basically, by doing a specific tapping in repetition and things like that. But basically, by these experiments, he learned the natural frequency of the planet, which is about 12 cycles per second. So if the primary is going to be tapping the earth into a resonant mode, you can't have a loose connection here for that. You need a solid grip where the primary, you're not going to change its oscillation. In that sense, waves through the earth that will go around and cross and come back, and it'll set up a resonant state, and you're expanding and contracting the earth. I mean, it's a very tiny amount, but it's an oscillation, it's a resonation. So the earth becomes a resonating object, contraction and expansion. And the primary was doing that, and that was the first reason that you needed a very tight connection to the earth here. And the second reason is the secondary was setting up the amplitude of the wave. And you needed a very tight electrical connection, especially if the earth is the conductor now. You can't have a bad connection here. That's, most connections are soldered, because you don't want loose connection, you're going to have heat buildup. You're going to have, if there's any gaps, your transmission will reflect as if it's the end of the line, and then you'll be dead in the water before you even start. So there could be no gaps. It has a very tight electrical connection here as well in order for this all to work. So those two reasons is why he said that there has to be a very tight grip in the earth here. So your primary is set up these oscillations. They're coupling probably together, and the earth is in a resonant mode, and the earth doesn't normally do this. It needs to be tapped to do this. If you're talking about the Schumann cavity up here, that does it on its own. This between the ionosphere and the earth is the Schumann cavity, and that resonates on its own. So anyway, so he had to set up a resonant state in the earth, which he figured out through numerous experiments, and then transmit this wave through the earth too. And these are concentric rings coming out like this, and these will couple with the earth's frequency. And then, you know, there's all these waves are reflecting back. You end up with standing waves where all the nodes are locked up, all the antinodes are locked up. It's a perfect standing wave in the earth. Because the earth is a conductor, like he called it, it was a conductor of limited dimensions. You know, you knew the dimensions, therefore you could calculate it as a wire, basically, or maybe an extra coil sort of effect. Also, it's a transmission line. You know, like in a previous video I did, a true Tesla coil is a transmission line resonator. So he set up the earth as a transmission line. Now you can tap in at any receivers. You can even do it at the specific locations of the highest amplitude of the standing wave. And if you know you got a coil in there, it's probably 1/4 length of the wavelength, and the standing waves are it's gonna start spewing out power. You're gonna have plasma. You can put it in capacitors and rectify it and do whatever you want. And this happens anywhere where the amplitude of the wave is high, which is going to be a lot. And you could put them anywhere on the planet. You could line up, I mean, it doesn't matter how many. You know, just because this one's getting energy doesn't mean this one's going to get less, and then this one's going to get less, because they're all going to get the same amount of energy, because it's all based on the standing wave and the standing wave ratio. And one tower could probably send energy over the entire planet, but in certain areas it might be good to have other towers. Mountains, oceans, any of that doesn't matter. If you ever seen a wave go around an obstacle, it's a very cool thing. They just work the way around things and keep going, and that's what these would do. Basically, this is a scalar wave through the earth, and I don't quote me on this, but I believe these waves traversed the planet and back in less than a second. It was about 0.8 of a second. So that's faster than the speed of light, and that's fast. And he had intended to use this for voice, images, music, communications. He had ways to set up private communications in millions, basically unlimited channels, quote unquote, for private conversation, private communications. It was set up for everything, or you could just tap into the power, or all of them. And he had figured it all out, how to do it. And he was successful also he lit up a bunch of incandescent bulbs 200 miles as one test, and it worked perfectly. And it's sad that this didn't happen, I suppose. I think anything, it's all underground. I think anything that discusses atmospheric energy, anything sending, Hertzian waves in the air, he was adamantly against. He was inefficient, way slower, couldn't be controlled like these could. And I even think if you read like the court transcripts, I think it's in court, where they're talking about the ownership of the property the tower was on. Anytime Tesla started to talk about exactly how the tower worked, they cut him off. It's not relevant to what we're doing, and partially that's understandable. They don't want to get distracted by those things, but it was so much that to me, when I read it, it seemed suspicious, like it was on purpose. They don't want anything recorded on how this worked, and I could sort of sense it in those transcripts. And I think that's where any of this atmospheric stuff, I think it was put in there as a distraction, as either by authors who just assumed it because it's a tower, or it was nefarious and for a reason. Tesla mentions, for lighting in houses, it would only require an apparatus slightly higher than the roof. And I think, that even sounds like it's getting some energy from the air or through the air. But even that, I think, is the same idea as the capacitance here. I think it would just need that tuning. And that's the same idea, just on a smaller scale. So I'll go over real quick again. The primary resonates, it bells the earth. The secondary grows the amplitude of the standing wave, and it all couples together with the earth. And all you have is receivers wherever you want to access the potential that's in that standing wave. As long as you resonate with it, it would probably be 1/4 of the wavelength, possibly 3/4, or any odd multiple of the wavelength would work. You have your overtones with that. So the grip, like I said again, was because you just needed a good connection for the transmission of the tapping, the belling. You can't have it loose in any way. It would mess that up. And also for the electrical transmission, like an antenna, you can't have any gaps, because then you'd get reflections, you'd get heat buildup around here, you'd get energy loss and all that, and you don't want any of that. So that for me explains the grip. At one point he even was trying to figure out, he figured he needed like a 600-foot tower for the capacitance, and he was even considering in his sketches having the support structures being in large coils, in order, because it was a part of the capacitance. He needed that electrical length to be as long as it possibly could. So but in the end, it was surface area with the toroid, and then all the semi-spheres on it gave the surface area and the capacitance, I guess, that he needed. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I think it was simple once you understand it, and elegant and amazing. Doesn't mean that any of these other theories may not work or anything like that, but in context to what Tesla was planning on doing, I think this was it, basically. And from this could stem unnumbered uses. I mean, it would be staggering really what you could do with this. So anyway, if you're still here, thanks for sticking around, and appreciate it.